We are live. We're live. Let's give everybody a chance to get into the throne room. I am not sure. We're not getting feedback on the mic, but welcome everybody. Welcome. We are excited to be here again back in the throne room. My name is Monica Jackson. I am the host, and sitting beside me is my beautiful, beautiful mom, Minister Deborah Ivory Chandler. And we are here for our next season of Throne Room Conversations entitled Mama Don't Always Know Best.
Right.
And
Ah.
I'm really excited about this, y'all. This is the first time me and my mommy get to come together and really talk about some significant and really impactful things. Some things that I believe that we need to have conversation about. And what better place to begin to have the conversation than right here in the throne room, the place that we've created for us to bring all of our issues, to be able to purge from them, to heal from them, and to find rest so that we can transform into that which we have been called and created to become. And y'all all know what that is. That is a royalty. And so, as we take this deep dive into this conversation, I'm going to put a disclaimer out here first. We are not experts in this thing. We are not people who know it all, but what we are people who have experienced life. We are people who love people, and we are people who love God. And we're looking for ways in which we can help our communities come together to be able to have these tough conversations so that they might be able to show up as themselves in their fullness, in their wholeness, as they were created to be. And so, you ready, mommy?
I'm ready.
I don't know, y'all. So she's been having some issues. She's like, I don't know if I want to be. I don't want to have this conversation. I'm not ready yet, but I think that we're more than ready. One of the things that we began this conversation when we were talking behind the stage about was the fact of how we show up, right? And one of the things that was really important about what she said to me was, when she had me, she was 27, and when I became a mom, I was 15. And so there's no way that we would have both been able to show up as what we society places boundaries and labels and stigmas on motherhood. There's no way that we could possibly show up as what people say we're supposed to show up as parents, right? Because there's nothing out there that really gives us a clear understanding of what that looks like. However, for in our conversation, and as we explored that
Mhm.
conversation, we began to kind of see things from a different perspective. And what we would like to do, and I know a lot of people, when they heard this title, Mama Don't Always Know Best, they were waiting for
What?
a conversation to say, the pointing of the finger to say, yeah, my mama didn't know, and she did this and she did that, and blah, 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 and my life was all upside down because of her. But this conversation is really about those who are wanting to come to the table, transparent about who they are, and really begin to walk the walk of finding out who they are and how to show up as a parent, right?
The
As
healing
what my mom, yeah,
conversation.
that healing conversation is what we said as stewards, right? And so, Mom, I'm going to give you a moment to just talk about what it felt like or what it looked like when I came to you and I said, "Mommy, I want to open up this discussion about what it looks like for a mother to mother." And I just want to give an opportunity for you to just be able to talk about that for a few minutes.
Well, one of the first things that came to mind is, oh my God, my failures. I should have, like you were saying, I should have done this. What I didn't do, I'm going to be exposed as a fraud, an imposter. Is this going to be a safe space? Is this going to be putting it all out there and all fingers pointing at me? That's the thing, the first thing that came to my mind because I made it about myself and my shortcomings. However, when I took myself back to the scripture um, in First Corinthians, and it talks about, I think it's 11:28, when it talks about let a man examine himself. I had to look at myself from the perspective that was called. I know that that specific scripture had to do with the Lord's Supper, but it goes a little bit deeper than that when we start to research the idea of examining oneself in scripture. It's taking a look at ourselves, not to tear ourselves down, but I know we in tradition has said, oh, I'm not worthy, I'm not going to partake. But that examination was not to tear oneself down, but to look
Right.
for the strengths, those things that we are called to be, find evidence that they exist in us as we
Yeah.
come. And those where places where we might have fallen short, that we have a fresh and a new opportunity to begin again, because as long as we have breath, we can continue, we can make steps forward into what we were called to be. That being said, I take a different perspective on this thing of motherhood and having this conversation. No, not as an expert, but I know there's always nobody gave us a manual. Nobody gave us a manual. But I step back and I say there is a manual, but we never took it that way to mean parenting. Um, when we were called and giving a created for relationship, and then there is a manual that tells us, for those of us who believe, how to be in relationship. And so when we start to look at that manual and look at ourselves, and we recognize where we are, that we recognize that it's all a journey. Parenting is a part of the journey. We journey through parenthood. And no matter where we are, we're growing with our children, we're learning them. Um, and we have a responsibility and we are accountable as stewards over what God has given us. And that thing about where, depending upon where we are and the age differences, also has to do with where we are in our walk and our
Yeah.
relationship with God and with truth and with seeking and understanding who we are and who we were created to be. I find so many times that when I'm thinking about my relationship as mother, I have to think about that relationship in terms of who I have been called to be and how I've been called to show up my identity in Christ.
Yeah.
I know everybody listening may not be a believer, but there is we bring to the table as parents this new life that we have been given to steward over, this opportunity to and the challenge to show up as God has called us to show up. And
Yeah.
it is not an easy thing because we are not perfected yet. See, that's the
Right.
thing. We're still in process and progressing
Mhm.
along in this journey and recognizing that we are a work in process on the potter's
Right.
wheel, still growing as our children are developing and growing. We are growing. And I have to say this, if we're not growing and if we're not changing and we are staying rigid, this is it and this is it, if we're not, that flexibility is not there, then that means that we are in a dangerous position because we are
Mhm.
supposed to grow wiser. And as we learn that maybe some of the things and the things that we have been taught, the things that we have been experienced, the things that we have been exposed in our cultures and our traditions may not have be the things in this, because this is not the same world for our
No.
children, is not the same world that we grew up in. And because we are coming up in two different spaces, we're growing together, but there's a level of wisdom that we're supposed to have. And I don't know how I would have made it without the connection to know that God is really the guide. He
Right.
is the book, and that even the things that I thought I knew about him, see, I thought, because his ways are not my
My
ways.
ways.
Now, when I was entering into we had those different points of phases of our relationship, and even the transitioning, even me being mother as to a young daughter, as a single parent, and what is God telling me to do, and me bringing my baggage and my weaknesses and my fears, all of that coming along with me. Um, the only thing I can say in all of that is the grace and mercy of God that guides us through.
Yeah, that's good. So I just want to say this to you, Mom. So, from my perspective, as I grow older, you have been a wonderful example, someone who I aspire to be like, even with your issues, right? So,
Even with my
even with,
stuff,
yeah, even with
my
your
bleeding
baggage.
issues.
Yes, even with your bleeding issues, I aspire to have the heart and the wisdom that you do. And that says a lot, that there are people in the world that we can still look up to that may have issues and go through life. But I don't think that we oftentimes look at it from the perspective that we should, right? So when you said, the first thing you thought was the fear of judgment and things like that, what I want to say to you is that you become hope, right? Hope that um, I have the ability to make it to another place. And because you are
Mhm,
my mom, it gives me another sense of security to say, I'm made from her. And because she done it, I can do it.
mhm,
And I hope that I know that everybody doesn't have that opportunity and everyone doesn't have the relationship with their mom that most people think we have. Um, but what I would say is that God gives us opportunities to be in relationship with someone in a way that can be motherly, right? And that we can take on a role in someone's life from a perspective that would be able to give them the same hope, generate the same types of, you know, feelings of I can do this and I can actually be a good mom. So for me, being a young mom, when I look at my kids and I say, "Oh my gosh, what's going on, mommy? I don't know why they're acting up or why this is happening." To be able to say it's gonna be okay is a big deal for me. To be able to say I come from my mom and they come from me. And I just got to know that we can trust and believe that God's got it and everything's going to work out okay. And so I just want to say to you, although you may have felt like, oh man, I don't know if I could show up to this conversation in that way. And I don't know if I can put myself out there. I just want to say to you, I thank you for
thank
being willing to do that. You've been a great example to me.
you. The one of the things that comes to mind is I have been fortunate because I had a good relationship with my mother. I'm going to say that that relationship transitioned over time. That's why I'm saying that. Because in my youth, I might have viewed her sternness and her strictness as she doesn't love me like everybody. She doesn't, whatever. She doesn't care, or she's too strict, and she doesn't want me to be exposed to this. She doesn't. She's trying to keep me from having a life, and she doesn't understand. I transitioned in the relationship, and I have to say this the transition most I transitioned to a point because I began to realize that she did how the depth of her love for me, even though I wasn't connecting with her the way that I wanted to connect to her. I did understand the level of her love for me, and I appreciated that and all that she exposed and poured into me and my siblings. But I still felt distant, and I think that's part of what happens in the relationship. It's like the parent over here separates them, and never the two till the two meet. But I think
Mhm.
as I got older, my mother became my friend.
Mhm.
I began to experience her in a different way. I began to have conversation with her, the woman conversation, to hear her heart. I also say I was fortunate in that I was able to develop a similar relationship with my grandmother. I ended up spending a lot of time with them. And a part of that is because as I began to seek God and to seek understanding and experience life and difficulties and recognize like myself
Right.
in relationship to my daughter and I started to see that relationship. And then I was praying to God because I wanted things to be different in my life. I was praying about ministry, and God was revealing home relationship to me.
Mm.
And I remember having a conversation with someone. I'm like, oh, my mother and I know this mother. I love my mother, but she's whatever, whatever. And they said to me, go hug her.
Mm.
I'm like, I'm not going to go hug her. She's not the hugging kind. She doesn't do that. That's not my mother. You know, she loves me. I know she loves me, but she's going to tell me, what are you doing? Blah, blah. But I remember it was the hardest thing because my spirit started to deal with me on that thing because I walked away from that conversation and it kept dealing with me. And so one day I stepped into her house because I would go by all the time and visit and connect with her. And I went to her and I
Mm.
hugged her. I held on to her. And at first it was like, but then I started to squeeze her. And as I squeezed her, that it's like I felt a melting. And from that moment on, our relationship was the expectation of a hug. Now, for her, her familial upbringing, there wasn't that huggy, kissy, that kind of stuff didn't go on for her either. But it was me being in tune into trying to listen to God, the Spirit of God as it led and direct me. And I was going to
Mm.
give this caveat because I don't want to say, I'm like, people say, you're talking about God, 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 God. There has to be a searching and a seeking, and wherever you want to label it and call it, there has to be an intense desire and a willingness to see yourself as imperfect in order to get to the next place and recognize it's going to take time.
Yes.
Our relationship didn't develop overnight. It's that taking the understanding, allowing the kinks to be worked out, right? And the
Right.
kinks can be painful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I,
saying that in spite of all the difficulties that we might have
yep. That's
come through,
exactly what I was gonna
we
say.
came
Yes.
through together.
Yes.
I'm still, Mom, we still have this bond. I'm kind of feeling this sense of the prodigal son. It's like,
Yeah.
it was all these things being said, and the older brother was wanting the dad to be angry and whatever. And the dad was, I was waiting for this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. As you were talking, what came to my mind was, you know, how did that feeling of being able to connect with your mom in a way that you've never seen before, how did that affect you and the ways in which you wanted to mother me?
Well, part of it is there was such strength in my mother. And the strength that she, the strength and the sternness, the love of life, the commitment to her responsibility as mom, and me
Yeah.
wanting to replicate that, but at the same time wanting to be independent of that because we all have our stories and we can walk
Right.
the same journey, but our experience along the way is not going to be the same. And so
Right.
I felt I had some feelings about my family placement and birth and how I was being responded to. And I had to have the conversation as I got older to understand because I felt neglected and overlooked and all of these things, and that I wasn't special. All of that baggage that, the stuff that they say gets ingrained in us from childhood. But then to understand and have the conversation, I remember having the conversation with my mother, and she looked at me and my dad. They said, "What are
Mhm.
you talking about?
Our perceptions, right?
What are you talking about? We didn't have to worry about you. We
Mm.
knew that we knew and we were confident that you had gotten you were going to do what you needed to do. We had that we responded to all our children according to what their needs were.
Mm.
And so your need
Mm.
wasn't the same. It's kind of that, and that's the attitude. Like as a teacher for all the for almost 25 plus years, I recognize that I could have a classroom full of students. They say the same age, same grade level, whatever. I'm teaching the same subject. However, each of them are in a different place and they're going to need
Mhm.
things. I grew to respect that. And because I respected that, And then I looked around at everybody. I'm like, all these problems that people are having, because I had this mindset because I knew it all, and I was going to go and get training and find out and figure out all the right ways to do everything because, like they call me Miss Chris.
Oh,
She
oh,
got it
our
all together.
deficiencies,
And
right?
so, right. So I'm not going to do this and I'm going to give my daughter this. I'm going to expose her to this. I'm going to do this, that, whatever. I'm going to give all these things and everything's going to work out perfect.
And then,
And God laughed. Because with all the independence and all the things that I thought I was going to do that was different, I wanted the conversation because I felt that the conversation was good, but the sternness, I wasn't going to be as stern, but I was going to put guidelines. We were going to have conversations from youth because I felt that conversation was valuable and all of these things pouring in and spend more time, all this stuff that I thought I was going to be able to do and that everything was going to turn out perfect. And reality is we are not in control. And when we're
mm,
in relationship, in any relationship, and we're dealing with another personality that's also on a journey, that also has a free will, and we have to know, we have to learn and walk with God in the parenting and walk with them in the parenting process, through the
right,
process,
through it.
and recognize and rethink our roles. Because I have some ideas and some attitudes, the activist in me, and I'm going to read to her about her culture and her history and teach her to be strong and whatever. And everything that I taught was being, let's say this,
Used
it
against
was
you.
being expressed as an adult. It should have been expressed, and it was been wonderful. But a child with all those things make you want to hair stand on end. And
I'm
so
sorry, mother. I'm
especially when
sorry.
you're still a single parent and having to go out in the world and work, and your child is not in a bubble.
Right,
And so I'm going to say this. We say it takes a village to, and we relate to that as far as in terms of raising a child properly. But I'm going to say, regardless, it's a village that does it.
right.
Whether it turns out, however it turns out, it was not just parental influence, because there are children who have been raised in households where you can look at it and say, oh, what a disaster, how dysfunctional. And those children were able to thrive
Yeah,
and be contributing members of society and make such phenomenal impact in what you would have called a broken home.
this is true.
So there's a village. There are other things that come into play. So it is very important that we all assume the position.
That's a
The
good one.
community assumes the position
That's a good
because
one.
maybe a 15-year-old may not understand how, but society and culture has created, and situations in life has created the circumstance where this has been the case. And as much as we don't want it to be that way. We wouldn't plan on it, but
Right.
we don't plan on these things. They happen. And when they do, we as those people, especially people when we say we are or believers in God and have a calling on our lives, that we assume the position. And that's not a pointing the finger, and that's not of being judgmental. That's assuming the position of stepping in and filling in the gaps.
Right. One of our listeners said, "Hey, Calvin, how are you?" He said, "God, in His infinite wisdom, created us to be parents, not for us to develop the best in our children, but for our children to develop the best in us." That
Isn't it? It works. It's a mutuality, right?
we talked about that too,
We
right?
did, because they reminded, because this is one of the things. It's like, so we are coming with our preset notions about how it's supposed to be done. And then we encounter this child, part of, like you were saying, Mommy, you're saying, fight smart, fight smart. But and so for a kid, I'm talking about Dr. King and fighting smart and standing up and holding a
That
banner
ain't
and,
happening in
and
the
making a
hood, Mom.
statement.
That ain't happening in the hood. I just
And
want to
so
let you
you
know.
said, Mom, that, and then I was like,
Mm-mm.
what? That's not going to work. So what
No,
do I tell her? No, oh God, well, what am I going to
just
say now? I
don't
don't
worry
want her to
about it. I
grow up to
figured
be
it
a
out.
fighter.
I figured it out, mommy. one day I just woke up and I said, you know what, my mama said, and now I'm gonna have to take this, and it's just gonna be me in the streets for life. But
But again, that's why it's like I said, people assume their position, and we say, okay, you may not, again, because remember, this was my baggage, these are my issues, my beliefs that may not have been, they might think, because see, things might work for you, but they may not work in another time set, in another
right,
period, in another culture, time. It's not,
yeah,
it just wasn't going to work out. A lot of the
yeah,
things that I was saying, and they needed to be handled a different way. I'll even put it out there this way. Um, I was steeped in exposure, protect
mhm.
her from she can't don't listen to this music because look at the lyrics to this song and that song and don't watch Live in Color. Oh my God, she's not watching that. She's not watching this. She's not
So you
and
left me to have to sneak and do it because I had to have a conversation with somebody when I went to church, when I went
listen
to
with the
school, right?
kids.
Right? Like, how you just gonna let me just sit out there and be with everybody and just everybody looking around, and I felt ostracized, right? So I'm going to go back on something you said, which was, we recognize that the things that we do back then may not fit right now. And that's a good opportunity for us to really pick up on a few things. One is that as times go by, we have to adjust our parenting styles to the ways in which I think, what do we call it? That ecosystem. We have to develop an ecosystem that fits within the framework of where we are in the world per se. But that doesn't mean that we get rid of the principles upon
The
which we
values, the
teach.
core values. Yeah,
Right, right. They always remain consistent. And if I could say anything is a consistent in any of the message that I will say, as far as expertise is concerned, is to say we do change, but the values and where we come from, those things remain the same. And I'm going to take it a bit further to say that some of the things that, yes, we experienced, we want to say that they were bad and, oh my God, why were they so stern? But those same things are the things that developed us into the
structure.
individuals that we are today. So if I didn't have the foundation that I had, where I didn't watch TV, I wouldn't have cared to read books, right? I wouldn't care to have done things. And so it's funny to my friends, because my friends who know me and know my children personally, when they don't want to do certain things, they enjoy reading, right? Like, it's like, oh, well, what you doing? Oh, I'm reading a book. Like, the TV is not their lifestyle.
Hmm.
And that only developed because that was my lifestyle. And so what we give off to our kids, we can expect that that's the things in which our kids will often give off to theirs. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. And the different styles upon which we parent, again, there's no one perfect way to parent,
That's right.
but it's all a journey. We're all here on a road to do the thing that we've been commissioned to do, which is to be fruitful, multiply, and, as my mom says, be a steward over the things that we have been given. And so I'm going to ask you, mommy, what does a stewardship look like? What does it really mean to be a steward from the parental perspective?
Well, I think that is the thing that was the driving force for me because it's like the song, "A charge to keep I have,
Mm,
a God to glorify." Because of who I was at the time and am, I had this faith in God and a seeking spirit, and I wanted to be pleasing. And in studying, I recognized that I was given this life, and that what I did with it, I was going to be held accountable for. That I couldn't just
right.
do whatever I wanted to do, because sometimes God knows I wanted to throw up my hands and say, I don't even care and leave it alone. But I couldn't,
Yeah.
because God had given me a responsibility for this life, that it was
Yeah.
gifted to me, and that my job was to pour in whatever it is that God is telling me to pour in. And see, that's where the other thing comes, because I could try to put in what my mindset is and what I'm thinking should be. But when God, if I'm praying and I'm seeking God and He's saying, no, don't do that, or you got to do this. I want to say, no, I'm not doing this. And she's going to be playing up. No, you can't do that. You got to, no.
I probably
And
needed to
so I was in
be
battle with myself. I'm going to tell you, I felt sometimes that I
yeah.
was going through trauma because I'm like, oh my God, you're beating me up here. And then I had the conversations with you about what you wanted to do and trying to get you to see. And I'm like, I don't care how upset you get, that I have been given a responsibility. And you didn't know what you. I know you must have thought I was crazy. I have been given this responsibility by God, and He's holding me accountable for it. And regardless, I take my responsibility seriously. And so, because I
Mm,
take that responsibility seriously, then this is just how it's going to be. It
yeah.
was a hard thing. A lot of times, very difficult, because as a steward, you recognize that this person is only on loan. They're on loan to you
Mm,
for a period of time. And as a steward, like we steward over anything else, that is my job to invest and pour into it so that it gets the greatest return.
yeah.
The greatest return is gotten on it so that you're able to show up in the world the way you need to show up in the world because you have been equipped to function and encounter, which is why sometimes maybe it seemed to be a bit much for you as a child. I know I've heard you say that, mommy, I was too young. You just pouring all this stuff, giving it all. And then when I was there walking in it and doing it, then you say, oh, why are you going to do this? And then people want to discipline me for it. But it was that idea that I was creating future, preparing this. It's like discipleship. I was
Yeah.
discipling this young life, guiding it to the place that it needed to be so that it could be a powerful presence in the world, a vessel to be used by God, because that was my thing, because that's who I was. The anointing your head and while you sleep and praying over you, giving you back to God, all of that. For me, it was more important for me to show up that way and be ridiculed, by people who knew me. You should be doing this and you should be doing that, or you should have done it. How did this happen? How, whatever.
Mm,
But it was more important for me to show up the way God was calling me to, knowing that
right.
this thing was greater than me.
That's good. So I guess I'll ask this, and you can answer, or you could be like, I'll pass. So because I recognize that it might be a question that might be a little iffy, but it's to say when so being that PK kid and being in a church all the time and walking and being inundated with God to and you as my mom always traveling all over, people looking at you. You are an impactful speaker. You're going over here, people are asking for you over there, and then to turn around and have to deal with your 14-year-old daughter at the time telling you that she was pregnant. And I don't think I even told you we were on homecoming. I think I was going out to go get a dress for homecoming, right? And you were like, what is going on?
No,
I
I
could
found
only
some stuff.
imagine.
I found some things in your room because I was that
I,
kind of mom.
yeah, you was nosy, but that's okay because I'm nosy too. Ain't no closed doors up in here. It ain't
I was
happening.
like, what is this?
I guess I want to say then, how did that make you feel? And again, I do recognize that this is a
No,
heavy
it's okay.
question,
It's
but
okay. Honestly speaking, I felt that I had failed you because I didn't make it about you. I made it about me because as steward, there must have been something that was me looking at me. There must have been something that else that I could have done, trying to figure out. Um, that's why I say being a parent is traumatic. It's a traumatic
yeah,
experience. I know people, we say the trauma, and we look at what happened with the ACE for the children and the trauma that the children experience. But
yeah,
when you're fighting culture and
yeah,
you're trying to do the right thing, but you're stuck in your baggage, you're trying to fight your stuff, your mess, recognizing that it may be mess, trying to fight your way to your healing, and be there and show up in the lives of your children as you're supposed to show up, and then
Yeah.
recognizing, see, this is the thing with that. um, it's not something that's behind closed doors that you can hide. Now it's out there for the world to see. All eyes on
Yeah.
me. She thought she was this and she wanted to be the perfect mom. She thought she was doing all these things. She did this and she did that. We didn't do it, but look at her and look at and look at her daughter.
Mhm.
Look at what happened. Look at
Mhm.
what happened. And even in that, the only thing I knew, I guess my protection has always been, the only thing I know is to turn to God for that. And I remember
Yeah.
having that conversation with you.
Yeah.
I'm here for you. I'm here for her. And I know even at some point, at one point, we had conversation, and you honestly said to me, "Mom, I can't handle this." And I
Yeah.
said, "Okay, we'll do this. We'll switch. I'll do this. This is what you're going to do. We work to put you in a different environment where you could get whatever nurturing it is that you, I mean, so when things happen, my thing is not for lack of trying, and researching resources and fighting a system, crying out for help, and the help is not coming, and you still trying to stand firm and be there in spite of what it looks like and in spite of your hurt,
Yeah.
because your hurt
Yeah.
wants you to back away and be angry. You can be angry, but you're talking about your steward over a life who's in process, and
Yeah.
you still got to show up as mom and grandmom, and deal with what they say about you and the labels that have been cast
Mm.
and placed, and knowing that you tried to do everything the right way, and you say, "Why, God?"
Mm. Yeah.
But I could have made it about me. But see, when I made it about me, then I can be angry. I could have been angry at you. But then
Why did
again,
you do
I'm
that to
reminded
me?
of
Yeah.
Elie Wiesel when he talked about the Jews and the Holocaust, and how he came out wanting to learn about Job. And he delved into Job. And I think I shared this with you. And he said, everybody's
Yeah.
talking about Job,
But what
but
about
what
the
about the
children?
children? The
Yeah.
children died. They lost their lives. They had nothing to do with this thing, this agreement, this proposition, what was going on between God and Satan.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that part of it, to the pain that you were going through and my love for you, I guess took away the anger, the upsetness, and put me in the mode of, well, we're going to do this.
And I guess I'll say to that, um, I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you. Um, I don't know if I didn't have you as a mom, how my life would have turned out. And so I can't um, overlook the fact that you carried a huge weight, right? And so even in the areas where I might not have felt like my mom just don't know, she don't understand. In the places that you did understand, those are the places I think that um, I needed to see you the most. I just didn't understand it. And those are the places that God allowed you to show up for me so that when I got to this place as mother who's more mature, who now has her own children, she could understand and see you differently, right? Because I can understand it from a different place. And so as I walk through that is to acknowledge that there's hurts on both ends. As mama don't
Mhm.
always know best, neither do the children. But we
They don't
both are
understand.
growing. Yeah, we're both growing and that means that we have to be gracious to ourselves and to each other as we take the journey together because we don't know. But what we do know is that there is a constant. We made a constant in the relationship, and the constant was there was God. And as long
Mhm.
as God was there, and as long as we are seeking God, God is going to show us the way. And I know again, this is not a platform where we always are very vocal about spiritualism and where we stand spiritually.
Hmm.
But for the sake of the conversation between this mama and this daughter, the foundation for those who say, we love how y'all show up. The reason we can show up today the way that we show up in the world is because of the consistent seeking of who God is to us in our lives and how we can show up for each other. So, loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. And the neighbor is our family, right? Our
Yeah.
neighbor is the relationship.
Our first
And
calling.
yes, yes. So I remember I was going nuts because I was like, I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I want to be able to go out in my marriage. I was like, I want to be able to do this and I want to be able to do that. And one of the things that you said to me as I was doing and pursuing all these great things in life, and that has a whole lot of things to do with my own baggage, right? Um, One of the things that you said to me was, Monica, your call is to your home first. Your ministry is in your children. You will find all that you are purposed for within your children. And I didn't really understand it at that moment in time, but oh, how I get it now. But I think that that's a powerful message because it's not just the message for me, it's a message for all of us, because when we really take the time to step back and understand what ministry really is, when you said the
Hmm.
discipling of our children, we get to understand that when we focus on them, we're really focusing on us. And as we focus on us, we can show up for them in ways that we could never imagine. Those then become the things that help us overcome addiction. Those then
Hmm.
become the things that help us go to places and endure and fight through things and build courage that we never even imagined that we could fight, because that became the focus of our strength, right? And I think that for you, even with a lot of things that you have done in life, I think for you, mommy, it was the focus of me being your ministry, right? You were, as you dedicated hours to, I remember them telling you that I couldn't read and I couldn't do this thing. And I remember you making me stand up and read Freddie Spaghetti. And I had to read, and
And
Freddie
he ate
loves
spaghetti. And
spaghetti.
he
And he
ate
ate
spaghetti.
spaghetti. Yes. But you
Hooked on
dedicated, and
phonics. Versus the
I had to
tapes and the
cheat.
music.
I just
And
want to
I
let you
wasn't a
know
teacher
I
then. I
cheated. I
wasn't.
cheated. I had to cheat because you was on me so bad that I was like, I better know this stuff or pretend I know it. So let me go and figure out what the cheat codes is so I can circle the right circle. So when she comes, she'll be happy and proud of me. Okay. But the fact that you changed a whole career to
Yeah.
ensure that I was going to be okay, that speaks volume about what sacrificial love looks like, what love looks like, what a steward looks like. Um, and so I have to ask you, what did that mean for you to give up what you thought was your life? Because I know you had all these dreams to become attorneys, to do all this stuff, fly all over the world. You was doing everything, whatever. But what did it look like to have to say less of me and more of you?
I guess I don't know the I wanted those things. I really did. And at several points, I mean, I stayed engaged and I was tried to connect in a different way. But I again, I could not find peace in myself. I think part of it is because what is it, 99.1, I forget that whatever the station is. I used to, because all the trainings and stuff that I was going to, I was on the road a lot and I was listening to a lot of teaching. I mean, teaching tapes, sir, I was immersed in it. And
Yes.
one of the things, there was a show that I would listen to about the great missionaries,
Hmm.
John Wesley, different people. And one of the things that I saw as I listened to their, because I was really into biographies and autobiographies, looking at the lives of great people. And one of the things that I found so sad is that they showed up in community great. They had a great impact, but how their families, their wives, their children suffered.
Mm.
Their relationships suffered. It
Yeah.
was horrendous. What the families endured um, without because their presence was lacking,
Yeah.
the focus was lacking. Everything had to die and bow to the ministry. I mean,
Mm.
pushed back, and it's like you're holding me back because God called me. But the thing that it was imprint, because everybody's message, the messaging that we receive is not the same because God speaks to everyone differently.
Differently.
And so
Right.
He spoke to the word that I got was, "You're not to do this without your family."
Right.
And that's why I maintained a relationship with my closer to my mother, um, close to you, and pouring into you is because
And still close to
and
your
if I'm going to give
grandchildren.
it, it's not that I couldn't do these other things,
Right.
but I needed to give them to you first. And when
Mm.
you got it, even though it didn't seem like you was getting it, I still had to water.
Mm.
Seeds have been planted. The seeds have been
Yeah.
planted. I still had to water, no matter where you were finding yourself, where your mind was, physically, emotionally. My job was when I had those conversations, and I'm telling you, it was hard for me sometimes to draw on the strength to speak life,
Mm.
to speak life. It's not about you. That was me dying to self, not making this thing about me. But that's going
Yeah.
back to the stewardship portion that you did not ask to be here.
That's good.
And because you did not, and I was given this responsibility and I chose this,
Yeah.
then there was an obligation for me to show up in the way that you needed me to show up at the time, which was not always something and I'm going to say though, when I think about the showing up, I found peace in that. So
Yeah.
even though, and then I saw that God was unfolding part of me not taking those routes and taking another route that may have been more beneficial to my spending more time and being available to you when you needed me to be available. I was I was really veering into the direction that God had for me because I ended up in a career that I said I'd never do. And I
Right.
have to shame to say this. I didn't respect the teaching profession to the degree that I respected. Not that I looked down on them, but I respected other positions above that. And so that was not something I was choosing for myself because I felt that those were roles that women were always relegated to. And I wanted to step outside of those boundaries, which is why I was teaching you to be able to step outside of the boundaries. Don't let anybody box you in, especially not this male dominant um, um, culture and not the wasp.
Mm.
But don't let them dictate to you how you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to show up. You are well equipped to show up how God has called you to show up. And He showed me that it wasn't for me to show up those other ways.
Right. That's
So that's
something.
why when Calvin had made that comment as about our learning, my journeying the way I journeyed with you enabled me to get myself in step with where I needed to go to focus. A part of my going to seminary, all of that had to do with me and my connection with you. My switching over to education had to be do with me in connection and relationship with you, and why, and even as a teacher, not just to you, then to help you with the children, all of that, and a role that never ceases.
Yeah. Yeah. That's some good stuff. And there's something that I always like to speak to the behind the scene, to the marginalized. I don't know why, because that's where I guess I identify the most, is to say that um there is someone who might be listening out there who might think that they missed an opportunity or that they fell short somewhere, or even for the child who might feel like, I wish I had that. um what's a word that we can give to them, as we continue this conversation of parenting. And I think it goes beyond just the parenting piece, right?
I
But
think
being
it's
able to
about,
forgive in that
but
sense
I think it's
too.
about, here I go being philosophical. I think it's seeking,
You just being you, mom. It's okay.
about seeking to know you. It's not back to how we started. This is not about blaming and
Right.
pointing the finger. That when we look at these roles and these position, mother, child, because a mother was a child, the
Yeah.
child becomes a mother or a parent. When we look at the roles that we've been called into, we see it from both sides. That's what we got to begin to see it from both sides.
Yeah.
We have to see because we have to speak and discipline the girl in us, and which sometimes that's what happens that we end up doing because we start putting us and our issues on our
Mm,
children. I mean, this is
yes.
another
Oh,
conversation to come. And
I
we put
know
that
that's
on them, and
that's
then
to
they
come.
have to live up to something and be disciplined and directed in a way because we're fighting off and trying to prevent
Oh
another us
yeah.
from coming up. Squash the stuff. We haven't dealt with it in us, but we're trying to deal with it in
Lord.
them.
Right. Lord, please help me.
But I say this, that there's always hope because as long as we are breathing, we have that opportunity. If we feel that we are we missed the mark in the relationship with our children, then we have to really get in that closet, get
Right.
in a place where we start to look at ourselves and deal with ourselves back to the examination, not to see all the negatives in us, but what is the good that we could build on.
Mm,
And we have to
yeah.
be courageous enough to hug her.
That was good, mom. That's good.
And it's
That was
like, oh
good.
no, I can't hug her. Look at all that happened, and she's mad, and this happened, and that, whatever. Because this hug came because I ended up leaving home, and my mother didn't want me to leave home. I had my own apartment. I wanted to, because I wanted to be out on my own. I had gone through some stuff with you, and I felt that I just wanted to, and I wanted her to understand, but she was internalizing it completely wrong. And I was like, I can't. This is just so frustrating. So but I was kept putting out an olive branch, putting out an olive branch because I was feeling and sensing her hurt and sensing her
Yeah.
pain. And that's not easy to do to try to put yourself in the other's shoe. We as a
Yeah.
culture, we have a hard time walking in and seeing putting ourselves in the place of the other. We want to see
Yeah.
our side, and we're going to fight hell and high, come hell and high water. We're going to stand firm on our ground to protect our own interests. We're not going to even budge to try to understand. Didn't say we have to agree with it.
Nope.
Where this other one is coming from,
Yeah.
and value the relationship and the connections enough to hug her,
Yeah. Yeah.
hug through the hurt, through the pain, in spite of the possible rejection, because that's what I was fearing.
Yeah.
I
That's
feared the
scary.
rejection, thought that's what was I was going to get, but that's not what happened. That was
Yeah.
eye opening. When I thought that
Mm,
this strong, whatever, that what I was going to get in return was this, hey, get out of my face, blah, 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 you know? And what I got was,
you spoke to her hurts. You spoke to her pain.
and
So
I hugged her even more, and she hugged me. I mean, it was the melting down, the tears from both of us, and is connect to the humanist to recognize that your children are human. They're people. They have feelings. They have emotions. Hurts. They hurt. They suffer when we suffer. We may think they're not experiencing the hurt that we feel, and
they
so we are
are.
lashing out, but they're feeling it and internalizing it and maybe blaming themselves for it.
Hmm.
But as a child, to recognize, and children, it's hard to say because when you say this child, I'm like, how old is this child? Because children don't always understand, they can't internalize these things. When they start to get older, as we continue to love them in spite of the hurt, and
Yeah.
love them through it. And we love them the best. Even we hurt because sometimes they're not able to connect to us because they've gotten themselves connected to some things and caught up in the culture. Because remember, culture, our ecosystem is vying for their attention.
Yeah. Yeah. I got caught up in that, right? I was there, and but that doesn't mean that all is lost. And so, as you talked
No,
about the child, I'm gonna put it on the other end, right? Is to say that we as parents, we can't show up and be parents. We are not parents apart from our own stuff,
that's
right?
right.
That we are parents and we have baggage, we have issues. We come to the relationship when we bear the child, we come to the relationship carrying all that we have. And in some cases, some of the stuff that we have, we give it to our children.
Absolutely.
We give it to them, whether it's through DNA or whether it's through our own
That's right.
actions in the household. We
Learned
give it to
behavior.
them.
They learn from
Right.
us how to respond.
Yeah. And so what I'll say to that end is, again, all is not lost, right?
No.
That we have an opportunity to do the work. And the work of healing is a process.
We talk
And
about
as
neuroplasticity,
right,
right, in relationship, that
good
we were
mom.
created for relationship and that
Yes,
broken relationships can be restored. That is
good
the
mom.
beauty of Christianity.
Yes.
That's the beauty of what Christ
Go
did.
ahead and do
And
your
when we look, that's
discipleship.
why we latch hold to him because he shows us the hope that the relationships are restored. And though I may be guilty in the eyes of man, that God has
Yes.
said there is now therefore no condemnation. So I don't have
Yes.
to feel condemned that this day I can step fresh and anew because everything that was past has been forgotten. That
Yes.
each day I have a new opportunity to start to rebuild this thing and I don't rebuild alone.
That's right.
That he's rebuilding with me as I'm praying and allow myself to respond differently. Because see, that's a problem because we've gotten some habits into some
Mhm.
habits and
Those
ways of
habits.
doing things. We got to break our own ways, our old ways. And so I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. Well, maybe you're not right.
Not
Mama
right.
ain't always right. She don't
That's
always
right.
know best. She's
That's
taken
right.
her views from what she experienced, and her world is not your world. And so
That's
when
right.
we think, and then we think that, look what these kids, they're so disrespectful. They're doing this to me. They're not doing it to you. They're fighting to try to understand and function within the midst of whatever it is that they're dealing with.
Yeah. That's good.
So we can't internalize it. And again, we can't personalize it. And that way, we have to step back and say, I am a steward. I have been given a
Yeah.
job to do. I'm going to take this step to do this thing the right thing. It may not be received. I take the risk, right?
Nope.
Because we take a risk when we go
There
with God.
is.
We take the
Yeah.
risk of doing it wrong. We take the risk of rejection. But
Mhm.
the intent here is I'm going to keep showing up to let you know that I do love you.
Yeah. We take a
I
risk
may have
either
done this
way.
wrong. I may
We
have
take a
been
risk.
wrong.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
acknowledge that. And so where do we go from there?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't, I messed up. So that wasn't the right thing to do.
Right. Right. Mommy, I'm proud of you. I love you.
We made
Thank
it
you for
through.
showing up. We made it through. It is 6 o'clock. And I just want to say how much I love you, how much I am grateful for your life, for your testimony, for your leadership, for your guidance, for your stewardship over my life, over your grandchildren's lives. And the best is yet to come for both of us as we continue to do the healing work, right? That
That's right.
again, we're still in the journey. We're still pursuing as we get older, even
You
in
know,
your
we're
age
not
and in
done.
mine.
And
Right.
there's still revelation to come to us of a newer understanding. We're coming through. We're still working out. There's still kinks. There's still things
Yeah.
there because we're still human. You're still you. I'm still me. And so we
Even
can't
in our
put
feelings, we get
ourselves,
feelings. Yes, we get
and we get in
feelings,
our
right?
feelings.
And emotions take way. And so it is what it is. But you know what? The love of God, the grace of God. And so we come back and we try to do it again. I might be mad, but I'm going to pick up the phone. You might be mad. I'm going to call you anyway. You going to be my stalker. Yes, mom, you's my stalker. And it's okay. I love the fact that you are. But yes, Jackie, Ned, Calvin, Pam, we just truly appreciate you and all of the love that you've shown us and everyone else who's out there who has been watching with us. Thank you for joining us for our first episode of this
Yes.
new season of Mama Don't Always Know Best. Please know that it took a lot of courage, a lot of work to get to this place.
Yeah.
And
It's not
we're just
easy.
excited. Yeah, we're excited for what God is doing in our lives, and we hope that whatever it is that we can share in this moment and be witness to, that it touches someone out there, that it touches a community of people to be courageous enough to begin to have the conversations in their own homes, in their own spaces, and to know that we don't have to know it all. We don't
That's
have to know
right.
it all to come to the conversation, but what we have to have is a willing heart, an opening ear, and an open mind to be able to receive some other thoughts and views that might not be our own. And no, we don't
Take
have
the
to take
risk.
on other people's stuff. It's the
You got to
That's
take
right,
the
mommy.
risk too.
It's the risk. I appreciate you
Loving
taking
is
the
not
risk.
easy. It's not
Ooh,
for the
don't tell
faint
our
at
next
heart.
episode, Mom. Don't take the next episode. Well, we are excited for what is to come right here in the throne room. We ask that you guys join us back here next Wednesday at 5 p.m. as our brother and our friend Ned actually kicks off in the barbershop conversations, continuing his journey on parenting from the male perspective. We are so excited to be bringing these types of conversations to the table, but
Yeah.
and what better place to have it but right here in the throne room. We look forward to seeing you guys. Don't forget to connect with us if you'd like to have any information with regards to any of the
Questions?
resources that we have, any questions that you have. Please feel free to connect at royaltynetwork.net or on all of the social media platforms, whether it's YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're all over the place at Royalty Mission Network. We are so grateful for all of you guys and all of our listeners. Stay tuned to see us next week. Bye bye.
Right.